Hello, good morning, and welcome to the Good Morning Education Show. My name is Rotimi Aitayo. Such a pleasure to be here once again. This is the Good Morning Education Show, and just for your information, I am streaming from Lagos, Nigeria, to West Africa, to Africa, and the entire world. And if this is your first time joining us on the show, please do let us know. We have what we call the Bell of Blessing. The Bell of Blessing is for you, and of course, to welcome and appreciate you to be on the show. We're going to have a great time today. Yesterday was a fantastic, amazing time. We're talking about living intentionally, and we had our guest from UK in Kilka, and she took us away. And of course, we had our analysts also. Lushola Lumde was present, and spent some time to share some tips with us. And we had Eben as well. Eben was also available, to share some tips with us. So it's been an amazing one. It's been an amazing one, and today will not be a different one. We're going to be having a great conversation on today's topic. We will be talking about leading yourself and others. It's going to be very, very important for us to look at that. But before we do that, let's just go on some few seconds break, and we will be right back. And after that, I will share with you the headlines of the Welcome back and welcome back. This is the Good Morning Education Show, and we are here once again. And on the show today, like I said, we will be having a great conversation about leading yourself and, of course, leading others. We will not be taking headline news today because of the conversation that we have, but I believe that is going to be an interesting one. It's going to be an interesting one. And I'd like to appreciate those who are joining us right now. Thank you all for joining. Good morning to you all. And those who are joining us across Facebook and YouTube, welcome as well on the show. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Now, I'm sure that you've heard of the word leadership. You've heard of the word leading. These are familiar words that you might probably have come across. And sometimes you hear that people tell you that leadership is everything. Everything rises and falls on leadership. These are fantastic statements. These are fantastic concepts that sometimes it will require you to understand the depth of the meaning, to understand the import, the importance of what it's connoting, for you to be able to understand that. And a lot of times, the fact that we listen to empowering quotes, we listen to empowering messages, does not necessarily mean we've gotten the keys to unlock the value and the leverage behind such conversation. And this is why I think that for us, we need to spend some time to really take some things into better perspective. And I use the word better perspective on purpose. When we say better perspective, the idea is because we want people to have greater outcomes in all that they do, in all that they represent. And if we're looking at leading yourself and leading others, it's something that I think that applies to everyone. When you look at it, whether you are a working professional, you're a career professional, some people will call it, whether you're an employee or you are an employer, an educator, a teacher, a school owner, whatever you find yourself in terms of responsibilities, um, The topic of today is quite important. It's important for us who, especially, are actually in the position to drive direction, or better still, those of us who are in the position already of responsibility, or we're nurturing ourselves, or we're being groomed for leadership. You need to understand that it's important for us to know how to lead ourselves and also to lead others. And I'm sure the very first question that might pop up in your mind is leading yourself a criteria to leading others? That's a very good question. And also, is the methodology applying to leading yourself the same required for others? So in answering the first question, is leading yourself a criteria to leading others? Absolutely yes. And why do I say that? Because the concept of self leadership is gotten from you understanding what leadership in itself is. And many times when I have the opportunity to share my thoughts on leadership or to teach around leadership, I try to bring two definitions into sync. The first definition is that when you look at leadership, you must understand that leadership is more of the mentality, because if you're not careful, you will give a definition that appeals to functioning or acting in a particular capacity. So, leadership is first a mentality, meaning that everyone, young and old, have what you would call mentality. What kind of mentality do we have? Is it a leadership mentality? So, what do we mean by leadership is a mentality? Let me help you understand. I consider leadership as a mentality of assumed responsibility. In other words, you have that inkling, you have that disposition, you have that understanding, you have that personal interpretation that whenever you see things, whenever you are around things, whenever you are around people, you have that inkling that it is up to you. You are expected. You're not looking at other people. That is meaning that you have assumed responsibility, and that's your mentality. Anywhere you go, if something has to be fixed, then probably you accept someone says no or someone else says step aside. That makes you always to come to a point and a reality where entitlement is put at the back seat. Now, should you be entitled to things, or better still, should you be a recipient of things? And they're not the same thing. Yes, we will be recipients of things, but we don't want to get into a place where entitlement, begins to breed laziness or makes us outsource, actions and also execution of things to people. Now, if you have the privilege of having things done for you, fine. If your position commands that people do things for you, awesome. But that should not take away your consciousness to respond to taking responsibility for yourself. That's what it is. It's a leadership concept which says you are having a mentality of assumed responsibility. Now, if you want to flip the coin, what it simply means is this: we are now saying that if I understand that my mentality is that when I see something, I shouldn't say, whose fault is that? I probably want to take it up as my responsibility first, solve it as my responsibility first, before looking for who to blame or looking for who was responsible. That's what leadership is about. It now tells you, for one who assumes responsibility of things, it means that when you are in an organization, you don't wait for the person that you think should have given you information. You ask for information. You are taking that mentality that, let me assume it myself. There's a bell at the door, and then somebody pressed the bell. You don't necessarily need to at least wait for someone else to go. You assume that if that there was nobody ringing out. That is what it simply means. And then when you now say you are leading yourself, in other words, it means you are the one who now places responsibility for advancement of self. You are now taking You are not expecting advancement from outside in, you are making advancement from inside out. Leading yourself helps you to know how to take your ability to a place of action. I normally play this exercise. I tell people to look at the word responsibility and try to break it into words. And you find out that one of the things you have in responsibility is the first word called response. Responses are natural to life, responses are natural to time. When you think about your response to a thing, then you not look at the word ability. So when you say response, you look at ability. But when you look at the middle letter of responsibility, you have a letter there, and it's a letter I. In other words, it means I need to understand. Responses is tied to my ability. I must respond to the level of my ability. Now, you see, some people mix it up. Your response is not just what is required, but your response to the level of your ability. And that's what brings us to the consciousness of what you mean by leading yourself. When I look at my frame, I look at my capacity, thinking about my knowledge, thinking about my skill, thinking about my exposure, thinking about my understanding, thinking about so many things. All those things I'm thinking about or I am conscious about should actually interpret itself when I get to do things. There are times that people applaud us, the word applaud us for maybe a post on social media, the word applaud us maybe for a comment, a video, for a training, for job done. You know, the bosses can applaud us, the regulators can applaud us, you know, the parents can applaud us, for teachers. And all these things, people say, oh, fantastic, good job, well done. We love what you're doing. You're doing great. You're doing amazing work. But you know something? I've come to realize that even when people applaud us, right, only we can tell if we did 100%. Yes, we were being applauded, but think about it. It probably was 40% you displayed to the world. It was probably 45% you executed. And people were amazed and like, we've never seen this done. Oh, this is amazing. You know, you put together an event and everybody's like, fantastic job. However, think about it from this perspective. If all that people applauded was 60%, then you cannot totally say you led yourself well. You led yourself with an output that was average, even though the world was celebrating you. They were celebrating an average capacity. It means you've trained yourself to do less. You've trained yourself to have less. And when you get to do that, it will be unfair to demand more from others, or better still, it might even become impossible to know how to demand all from others. And that's when we need to ask ourselves, as we lead ourselves, is it that we are delivering some of ourselves? Is it that we are delivering less of ourselves? Is it that we are delivering more of ourselves? And when we get to understand that, you will now see the correlation. Remember, I asked the question, is it a criteria? Leading yourself absolutely is a criteria. Because the truth of the matter is that as human beings, as educators, as business professionals, as career professionals, we have different dimensions of ourselves. So when you say me, when you say you, your identity is a composite of several dimensions. In other words, we need to understand, for you to lead yourself, you need to lead every dimension of yourself. Unfortunately, what happens is that we get to lead in some dimensions. So you find some people don't lead in all the areas of themselves. And for you to say you are leading, I want to use the word leading from the concept of position now. You know, so if I'm leading myself, in other words, it means that I'm leading, I'm having a star edge, I'm having a star relationship with every dimension of myself, or better still, should be with every dimension of myself. You understand what I'm trying to say? And so this is very critical for people out there, you know, listening to us and trying to glean from the message today. If you're going to lead others, or better still, let's even lead others. If you're going to lead yourself, you need to begin to say, what are the dimensions of my life? You know, I know that typically when you want to break it down, at the least you should have almost 7 dimensions of yourself. You have a dimension of yourself that has to do with yourself in conjunction with the society. That's the communal dimension of yourself. Yourself in conjunction with your relatives, right? That's your relational dimension. And when you look at it yourself, also with the relationship of your body, that's your physical dimension. When you look at yourself in relationship with your mind, that's your mental dimension. You look at yourself relationship with your body, that's your physical dimension. You look at yourself in money, that's your financial dimension. You look at yourself in relationship, to your industry, that's your professional dimension. If you look at yourself in relationship with, you know, your job, that's your career dimension. And of course, if you look at yourself in your relationship with your God or your faith, that's your spiritual dimension. Now, all these dimensions are available, but the question is this: do we lead ourselves? Am I responsible or are others responsible? So, what happens is that if people fall short of supplying you support, if people fall short of supplying you information, if people fall short of supplying you motivation, inspiration, if people fall short of supplying you the push and that drill of go for it, you will not do much because you've accepted that others must lead you rather than leading yourself. You know, yesterday on the show, Olushola Olumide was saying something, and he said that, when we want people to help us, he used an adage in Yoruba. He says that if you want someone to carry your load, you probably also need to pick your load from where it's the heaviest the most, so that people can now help you. And my interpretation of it is that when you look at the burden you carry, your first goal is to lighten the burden, not to outsource the burden. So everybody just says, "Oh, I'm looking for someone that just take my problems away." But you need to understand that you must be participating in that solution. You must be participatory in your freedom, in your solution. Not that someone just comes, and takes it all away, And that is where a lot of people miss it when we talk about leading yourself. I hope this is making sense to people right there. I'd like to thank the Flourish Gate Global Consult. Welcome you to the show. Thank you for joining. Please do let us know where you're streaming from. If you're joining us and you're saying you just type your name and your location so that we can recognize and appreciate you. Thank you all. Bell of blessing to Flourish Gate. Now back to what we're saying. Still on leading yourself. It must be seen from a practical point of view. Leading yourself. We must begin to understand, how these things work. We must begin to understand how these things play out. A lot of people sometimes don't see the results that they seek. They sometimes feel concerned, so concerned. Why is it that things are happening the way they're happening? Sometimes they look at it and they feel that things are not adding up. They look at things in their lives and they feel that, well, if only they can get this or if they can get that, But you see, sometimes the real reason behind not having it is because when you don't lead yourself, you actually begin to become a victim of choice. Your choices become almost like a slave master to you. You think about it. Have you ever sat down and reflected on the quality of choices that you've made? Because in leading yourself, you need to understand one of the things that will stick out vividly is your capacity to choose, your capacity to use words, your capacity to make choices. And a lot of times we do choose even when we don't choose. Not choosing is choosing, actually. Not making a decision is a decision itself. Not making a plan is a plan itself. And so it typically makes us to understand that sometimes it's because a lot of people do not feel, or better still, do not understand that they have the power to choose. Now, I want you to understand this, and you might want to write this down, that every time you wake up in the morning, every time you find yourself awake to yourself, apart from being thankful for being alive, you must be mindful of the power of choice. You see, um, and I promise, well, let me not use I promise, but I plan to actually take on a series sometime soon on the word no one ever promised tomorrow. You know, a lot of people say tomorrow is not promised, but as it sounds logical, but if you think about it and you understand the principles behind promise, who says tomorrow is not promised? Is actually promised. So you must get to understand as an individual that while I am thankful, I am also mindful of the fact that I have the power of choice. You have the power of choice. Don't ever think that situations actually are above you. Situations are situations, that's what they are. And give it the right name. They are situations. Challenges are challenges, that's what they are. Give it the right name, they are challenges. But your choice actually galvanize your behavior towards the kind of responses that you have. And the quality of response you give to life determines the eventual outcome that you have. While you might not be able to stop the rain, but you can actually determine how you will be when it rains. You can decide to wear warm clothes. You can decide to put on, a raincoat. You can decide to pull up the umbrella, and that doesn't stop the rain, but that also doesn't stop you. But so many people have allowed a lot of things, trivial things, major things, to affect their life outcomes because they've forgotten the power of choice is in their hands. They become circumstances themselves because they've allowed circumstances to turn them into their creatures. They are creatures of circumstances, whereas they don't understand that we actually can be creators of circumstances. When things happen to you, you must begin to ask yourself, what should I do? I have the power of choice. I can say no. I can say yes. I can respond in this directive or direction. I can respond in that direction. That is you leading yourself. And this is one of the things that I have a big concern for us in Africa and in the third world. I think we've been sold the wrong agenda because a lot of times we wait for information and automatically we also wait for direction. And if you have an internal conversation with yourself, you could drive your sector in a direction without comparing yourself with others. You see, if you are able to lead yourself, you are able to lead yourself. Trust me, you will also get the opportunity to lead others. And that is why you find out that most of the Western countries, they've not figured it all out. They probably are not perfect, but they are having leading systems because they've thought about it that they are going to do things about what they face. And they are doing it not just for themselves, but they've got into a place of mastery that they are beginning to lead others. They now understand because of the thirst and the shift in the result that they desire, they are now programming others to follow the desired change. And so everybody is now being tutored, everybody is being nurtured to follow after the provided direction. That's why you hear people say a leader knows the way, a leader shows the way, or better still, a leader knows the way, leads the way, shows the way. Now, the truth of the matter is this: is there one way? The answer is no. And so when you look at it, a leader is really someone who has taken himself up and assumed the mentality that it's my responsibility to take people on the way. So the way that the leader takes becomes the way that others follow. Whether it's a true way or not, the leader is the one that determines. And so we begin to understand that for us to get better in the things that we do, for us to get better while we work, for us to get better, we must understand that the capacity to lead ourselves is very important. Now, when we move away a bit from the mentality of assumed responsibility, when others are in the perspective, you need to understand that in leading others, you must show direction. You see, that is where you find the word vision very powerful. A lot of times you don't sometimes you need to write your own vision down, although you need to. But when you are leading others, once it is outside, you must provide direction. Direction is very critical, sometimes much more critical than skill, because you must be able to provide direction when people are in a team, when people are in a group, when people are in an organization, when they don't have a sense of direction. In other words, no matter the skill available, it can cripple the organization, it can cripple the sector. It's the same thing. And when there's a vision, we need to understand that the next thing is to cause the people to envision that vision. They must be able to see with their eyes what you've seen with your eyes. And that's why you need to begin to ask your people, or begin to ask yourself, are the people that I have workers or they are leaders? That's why a lot of times you ask people the question, what is the most valuable asset in an organization? The very first thing you hear most people say is the people. And in some cases, just like Jack Welch, the former general manager of General Electric, Jack Welch was saying in an interview, reportedly said that people are not the most valuable asset in an organization. It's leaders. And when we say leaders, we're not saying positional leaders. We're saying people who are able to assume responsibility. Because it's not a perfect world. You know, you can't be told everything 100%. But when you have a team that are leaders on their inside, they are leaders in their attributes, in their behavior. When they see vision, they ask questions. Or better still, they come into a place to really want to embrace vision. And that's what it is. You want to be able to nurture leaders out of your people. You want to be able to make them take responsibility. Everything cannot be thrusted on their laps, except you want them not to have that mental capacity to be able to reason their reality out. That if I do not have a direction and an instruction from my boss, I do not have an instruction from the organization, from the sector, from the regulators, can I self regulate myself to delivering value? Not people who always wait for conditions to be right and perfect before they take the right steps for them to have the kind of result that they seek. These are things that are quite important. Leadership is sometimes taught in a wrong way, because it's almost like saying, you know what, we just need a leader to do everything. No, leadership also comes with a culture, and the culture it comes is a culture of responsibility, is a culture of alignment. You see, it comes, and for it to function well, it must function well in the right atmosphere. If you don't have that leadership culture instilled in the people, in the processes, in the way that you do things, your people will eventually outsource their responsibility to you. And it will look like, oh, well, I need to bring them up, I need to raise them up. But they will find tough instructions as some things that might break them. Why? Because they missed out on the point and the reality that we've been trying to make all this while. You know, these are things that really give us concern. And I hope, you know, as we share our thoughts together today, as we explore this conversation, I know people begin to think about things and begin to look at it in a different way. If you will lead others, you must provide direction. And one of the ways you provide direction is shared vision, to the point where it is end vision or on vision, if you want to say it that way. And when they get to understand that, you understand in leading others, you must understand there's a powerful tool in leading others, is what we call task allotment, time allotment. And everyone needs to understand that as you assign tasks, you must also understand that there must be also time allotted for the task. Because some people just say, what are we doing for today? Oh, you know what we're doing for today? We're trying to solve problem XYZ. Now, the truth of the matter is, are we saying that we're solving problem XYZ from 8 to 6 p.m., 8 to 9 p.m., 8 to 5 p.m.? Or are we only having an hour for problem XYZ to be solved? So the consciousness and the skillfulness that we will apply to task XYZ is within the hour. It makes people to understand. Naturally, there's an unwritten code that tells you that you need to have sense of duty. You have to have sense of time. You have to take ownership of work and time. So you won't act like you have all day faffing around with drop, talking around with drop, all those distractions. Why? Time has been allotted. You see, sometimes people can mean well, but they might not do well. And you don't confuse your intentions, right, for your actions. No, we cannot confuse that. Your intentions are internal thoughts, internal motives, internal desires, internal aspirations, and sometimes internal conversations that you have with yourself. As long as it's not translated to outside, as long as it's not translated to execution, we cannot say that thinking right, meaning that you've done right. No, it will take thinking right to do right, but thinking right alone cannot be equated to doing right. And that's why sometimes a lot of people do not get it, that as they lead themselves, they don't realize that if you're going to lead others based on their training, their appetite, their frame, their experience, and exposure, there needs to be supervisory functions that will regulate their behavior. I, for one, believe that people are only going to perform based on how they are measured. So if somebody knows that this action or inaction will cost me my salary, will cost me XYZ amount, you know, then automatically that makes, you know, that makes that person to to get into a point and into a situation and into a state where they just want to do the thing that they need to do and they want to do it quickly. You get what I'm trying to say? So it's this is how you can get to lead yourself and also lead others in the process. I'm going to get you to go on a break and then we'll be right back and then we'll come to the concluding side of it. This is the Good Morning Education Show. If you're joining us, thank you for joining. We will be right back after this short break. Thank you. All right, welcome back. This is still the Good Morning Education Show. My name is Osman Itaya, and we are speaking on an interesting conversation, which is leading yourself and others. And if you've joined us before now, you'd have heard me talk about the conversation of today in such an interesting manner. And so our plan is now to come towards the end of this conversation by looking at some things that a lot of people need to understand. Now we understand that personal responsibility is very important. Ability and capacity to deliver change is also important. Now, the question that we need to be asking ourselves is, why do we find it difficult to lead ourselves? And then what hinders people? What hinders people from leading themselves? Very important conversation. Are there things that hinder people from leading themselves? If yes, what are those things? Why do people find it difficult to lead others as well? Number one, what will hinder you if you want to tell yourself the truth? If you do not have personal, I don't want to use, but let's look at it. If you don't have a deep-seated yearning for something greater than what you have at the moment, it might be difficult for you to lead yourself. There has to be something that you desire, because it's that desire that fuels your hunger, that creates an unusual appetite for more. So there must be the desire, there also must be the hunger. You must have a desire for more. You must have an hunger for more. That is what really will help you if you really desire to lead yourself. There must be the desire, there must be the hunger. one of the things that you find difficult in leading yourself and leading others is once you don't have that desire and hunger, you might also have actually messed up with the public perception that you have. And so it's almost difficult when you are acting an aberration to expected behavior, in certain situations. It will be difficult for you to lead others because you've not shown your personal proof. You don't have a proof of concept of what you're saying. You don't show that you are diligent and you're asking others to be diligent. You don't show that there's a measure of result and you're asking others to. Now please understand, we're not saying that you must possess something higher than others, but you must have proof of what you're talking about. So you can raise people to make millions, and you must not necessarily be poor while you do so. Your knowledge about being rich should have a fruit of wealth. You might not be richer than people that you're talking to, but you must understand you're at least demonstrating that you're on the way to your riches. You shouldn't be be lacking proof. It will be difficult. Let me welcome Olusola Olumide to the show. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Rochimi. Yes, good morning to our audience out there. Nice to be here once again.
So yes, we're talking about leading yourself and others. Leading yourself and others. Are there conversations that you would like to add to that?
Hello?
We're talking about leading yourself and others. Are there
Yes.
contributions to make?
Yes. Thank you very much. And from the line of thought I had when I came in, that is quite valid. I think people follow those who knows the way. And at times, people may even follow those who doesn't know the way, but they appear to know the way. There must like you have said, a benchmark or a template to follow you. And I think self-leadership appears to be the more difficult aspect. Leading others may not really be difficult. But leading oneself and being able to do, because if you are leading others, you are not leading yourself, it's as good as telling people to do what I say, but don't do what I do. So you must be able to lead yourself. And I discovered that when people find it difficult to lead themselves, they begin to clamp down on others. Respect is earned. But when somebody is telling you, what do you mean? And they are trying to tell you that, don't you know that you have to respect me? It's either you are meeting for the first time, you don't know the person, or you know the person for a while, you see no reason to follow the person. And it doesn't mean the person is going in front, you are following at the back, but the person influences you. The person feels, I love this person. I appreciate the way this person does. Like you have said, you may not be richer. You may not even be older. I had an experience. A prof walked into my office to do something. And I told him, okay, I will help you do this and do that. Then I'll get back to you. So because of that, he collected my number. And I discovered that he follows me ardently on my status update. He's a professor of human resource management. One day, I just received a call. He said, hello, so and so, that's your book, Winning with Emotional Intelligence. I need to have that book. How much is it? I told him, I said, Prof, I'll come to your office to come and deliver it. I went to his office and delivered it. Then he paid. In March, we were in Abuja. You remember? Yeah. While the session was going on, that was on the 15th, I received a call. And of course, we're in the bunker. So, I came to the balcony. And lo and behold, it was the same prof. He was just telling me, I said, oh, thank you for what you are doing. Continue, keep it up. In fact, my inaugural lecture is coming. I have gleaned nuggets from that your books for my inaugural lecture. He's older than me. He's more qualified than I do. However, he felt this is not his field. Yes, human resource managers and whatever people managing other people, they need element of a whole lot about emotional intelligence. In our feels, okay, this guy is doing the virtually everything I put on status. He has become subservient to me. I'm not saying I have become superior to him, but in a way, he felt, oh, this young man is influencing me, influencing my thought. I could glean things from him. So, in a way, that is a form of leadership. So, if we're ever going to lead people successfully, except we want to conscript them, or we want to hypnotize them or cover their faces with blanket, make blind us. So I want to drop there. If you cannot lead yourself, you can't lead other people except you want to make a slave out of the people that wants to follow you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I love that. And Bella Peters, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to the show. We are talking about leading yourself and others. And you know, the concept of leadership is such a popular concept. And a lot of people also have misinterpreted, you know, a lot of people have misinterpreted the dynamics, you know, behind leadership in itself. You know, while I was speaking, I talked about leadership in terms of responsibility, in terms of understanding, and a lot of things. And I'd like to ask you, what do you think? Just give us two, if you can. Two things that will hinder people from leading themselves and others as well.
Thank you, Rotimi. One thing I will say, leading oneself, I think it has to be with self. And I've said it in different places. Personality discovery should even come before purpose discovery. So that person does not become a squad. You should be able to define that for a better position to lead yourself. Then leading others. There are many factors. But I would say influence matters. You know, the first thing that came to mind was character. As important as character is, do you know a leader? Character, and they have massive followership. Yes. Fine, we may say that where the person is a bad person, he has character flaws, the person is this, is that. In his flaws, he has the charisma and the ability to sway people and move them along. So character is great. When we are talking about positive leader, of course, that could be negative or positive, but we are looking at leadership now, making people to follow you. I think for me, I would say number one is influence. Then, when you are talking about positive leadership, we say character comes before influence. But we have seen people who, I don't know, who are despots, and yet they have massive followership. People are following them because they have the charisma, they can sway people, even though the people know they have been led to ruin. But he has influenced them so much that they need to go. So if I will take the pick of the pack, I will pick influence. Of course, we can't throw away character. Then we'll talk about discipline, we'll talk about responsibility, we have talk about human management skill. That goes a long way. Of course, one characteristic does not make a leader. So a whole spectrum like that, you have to be great at people management if you are going to lead people at whatever level of the organization. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, you know, looking at some of the things you said, I know that a lot of people will be thinking about it like, okay, so these are exceptions and all that. But I know that people out there really desire to mean well and desire to do well. I think while we know that these are things that can limit or hinder, what would you consider as your top two prerequisites for successful, for successful, outcomes while leading others? Did you get that question, sir?
I did. Yes, looking at the top two. Um, hmm. Like you have said, the top two. Number one, I will say having result yourself, ability to replicate what you want to replicate. Because leading people shows you have experience, you have mastery, you have the competence. That's why somebody doesn't just come up to them. Because of course, there are exceptions to the rule. There are people, that's why they say, are leaders born or they are made? So probably that is an argument for another day. But I will say, I think being able to replicate results, we have a charisma, then you can replicate results. Because even when you have what it takes inside you, if you don't have the charisma to lead people, people may not follow you. Yes, and many things come together to determine the charisma. So I will talk about ability to replicate results, then I will talk about charisma. Those are the top two for me.
So can you just say a little bit about charisma?
Thank you. When you are talking about charisma, charisma is a whole lot, and many things comes together to talk to explain that word charisma. Number one, a good speaking ability is one. Number two, interpersonal relationship is great. Then number three, there should be wisdom. Yes. If you speak, you discover that a whole lot of leaders, go and check. Maybe only a few of them. I'm not talking about the leadership by election, leadership by a coup d'etat or whatever. Voluntary, where people know that this is the best wonderful. They are always great orators, because words have powers to sway the mind of people to the point where people feel and say, no, this is the man we need to follow. Then interpersonal relationship. Everybody wants to feel important. And I tell you, if you go to a place where you are validated, you are appreciated, you are celebrated, you want to go back there. If somebody become toxic to you, put you down, never sees anything good, you want to exit that environment. It's not good for you. So great human interpersonal relationship. And I think the third thing I mentioned, wisdom. Wisdom is key. Ability to dissolve doubts and all that. I wouldn't know how much of a great speaker Daniel was looking at the scripture, the Bible now. I wouldn't know, but it's obvious he has circle of influence. He had people, so he's somebody who relates well. Then finally, he had wisdom. Automatically, he was able to dissolve doubt and no controversy. It came to a point where we said, this is the guy that we're going to put at the end of our affairs. Yes, even though he was a stranger. So you get to a place and people see the way you go about attending to issues. They say, see, if we not go deceive ourselves, look at this guy. His ideas are heavy. And we're making progress. And why don't let him put it at the end of our affairs? Yes. However, ability to relate with people also matter, because if we are able to expect somebody who has wisdom to be able to relate well, because or else that wisdom is anemic. But if somebody gets to the place of leadership suddenly without having these three I've mentioned, he may have others. That person may be on his way to ruin himself or probably ruin.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and just maybe a last question. Sometimes while you lead people, there's a lot of expectations, unmet expectations, unrealistic expectations, so many expectations. And people are actually tied down with the struggle of keeping up. How do you keep up?
Thank you. You have said it well. It could be daunting and overwhelming when there are great expectations. But for me, a participatory kind of administration. No, the leader is not is a foreman, but he cannot do the work of 4 people. He has to delegate. He has to develop other people. When you allow the people you are leading, well, for me, I don't see it as we are looking for the word to use now. Maybe you are not you are downgrading yourself. There is need for humility. There is need for openness. You guys, this is what we are supposed to do. Can you bring your idea? Yes, you are still going to be, you are the arrowhead, you are still going to point the way. But when leaders make themselves invincible, as if they are not there, nobody else can do it. Or if my idea doesn't come, all other ideas are wrong. Then you will put yourself on the hot seat. I must not fail. What will people think of me? Because you have initially made yourself a god. Now you are beginning to fall short of that high position you put yourself. Then you are afraid. But if you have it all, so when I think the pressure will not be more on you because you are vulnerable and you are authentic with the people you are leading. But when a leader feels is inerrant, he cannot make mistake, he cannot have a downtime. When that downtime that can kill the man, because you have projected yourself to the world as if you are inerrant, which is not possible. But if you let the people know, okay, no problem. Okay, this is what to do, but can I have your idea? Oh, great. I think we'll work with your idea. Yeah, that doesn't mean you are not the leader. Expectations are there, but individually, we should not put more pressure on ourselves by making ourselves appear infallible to the people we are leading. To make ourselves appear as if we cannot be, I have seen a lot of parents make that mistakes. And because as the children are growing, the children are beginning to see the lapses in their parents. When a child is 1 or 2 or 3, the father, the mother, they are like God. By 5, 6, 7, whatever they do is sacrosanct. But as they grow into puberty and teenage years, the earlier the parent realize that we have to tell, I'm your parent though, but I have my shortcomings. Let me hear from you. You have made yourself believe you are the almighty everything. And the child begins to notice, look at mommy, look at daddy this way. That child will lose interest. He feels he has been deceived or the wrong picture to me. So as leaders, we should not paint a wrong picture about ourselves. We should not put ourselves in a very difficult situation to go back to the people we are leading to tell them that we need the idea to support our progress. I think if we do that, external expectation culminating with internal illusion, it can kill that person. Thank you.
I like that. And on that note, we'll have to end the show today. Thank you for joining us. And I believe people have gotten value from this. We'll be here same time tomorrow, God willing. And we'll also have another interesting conversation on the show. We'd like people to subscribe to our channel, like our channel, share the videos, tell others about the Good Money Education. Here on Sundays or the weekend special, 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Molushala will be at the count of 2. We're saying our goodbyes. 1, 2, go. It's always
It's always
Are you there?
a great morning.
A great one.
Yes, I'm there. It's always a great morning on the Good Morning Education Show. Bye.
Bye, everyone.